Welcome, friends, to another episode of Gender Equality Talks. Today, we have a very special guest amongst us from Taiwan, Jennifer Liu. So, welcome, Jennifer. How are you?
Hello, everybody. I'm Jennifer Liu. I'm from Taiwan right now. I'm the director for Asia program at Outright International.
Right. Thanks a lot, Jennifer, especially for dedicating so many years, all 20 years, nationally and internationally, on LGBT rights and political reform movements. Friends, those who may not be new, so she's a social worker, lesbian, feminist, author, and Taiwanese. And before joining Outright, Jennifer was executive director of Taiwan Equality Campaign, known as Marriage Equality Coalition Taiwan, a leading organization that pushed marriage equality in Taiwan. So thanks a lot, Jennifer, for joining us today. And also because in the previous episodes of Gender Equality Talks, we've heard voices from the front lines, and especially more from Southeast Asia and South Asia and Africa. So it would be great to first of all to learn. Please let us know how the highlights of Taiwan's progress on gender equality and human rights for gender diverse people, including LGBTQIAP plus people. Over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again, and I'm very excited to share Taiwan stories. I have been working in Taiwan's LGBT movement for over 20 years. So recently, I think around the world, people noticed that Taiwan is the first country in Asia passed the same-sex marriage in 2019. So it's already 4 years past. So still, right now, we are the only one. And so Nepal, we know they are also going through a process that the civil society right now have the Supreme Court's decision and to push the government to moving forward, right? So, but the Taiwan, we passed the law in 2019, so attract a lot of attention. And right now we can see many interesting changes recently. The reason I said same-sex marriage is because right now we haven't achieved equality. So that means there are still some gaps between heterosexual couples and same-sex couples. But the government and the civil society is still working on that based on a lot of research, campaign, and advocacy work. For example, recently, I think around a few months ago, the government, the early this year, before the Lunar New Year, the government issued an administration orders to legalize transnational marriage, which means if you are with your same-sex partners, you are the foreigner in Taiwan, right now you are be able to get married with your same-sex partner in Taiwan. So besides people from China, because that under the other regulations. So because we have some special issues between Taiwan and China, I believe everybody knows that. But besides China, everyone around the world, you can get married with a Taiwanese in Taiwan, which was not allowed in the beginning, like 3 years when we passed the laws. And also we passed the co-adoption rights between same-sex spouse, but still other things we are working on that.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. This is really very important for all of us to hear about the same-sex marriage laws in Taiwan, as well as co-adoption rights for same-sex couples. In India, it's a very contentious issue currently, and let us hope that progressive laws can happen so that people can live in a socially just atmosphere, in a socially just manner, regardless of their sexual identity or gender identity or orientation or expressions. So Just to be clear, because in our countries, we are still struggling we are at different levels in different countries in South Asia and Southeast Asia. So in some places, same sex is criminalized. In India, we have made some progress, but long way is ahead. There's so much more which needs to happen to make sure gender diverse people can live a life of dignity and fully. So just can you just immediately clarify that same sex is not criminalized in Taiwan? Not only same sex marriages and co-adoption is rights, but also no. So what more needs to happen? Yeah, over to you.
Yeah, so right now, I think people, especially the same-sex couples, they want their own kids. They cannot use alternative reproduction technology in Taiwan. And one of the realities is Taiwan, we do have the lowest birth rates around the world. I know in India, people are still quite willing to have babies, but in Taiwan, I think every couples only have like 0.8 kid. So that means we have very, very low birth rate. So, and also we have very strict alternative reproduction law. So, but a lot of same-sex couples, I think it's still a part of our traditional culture that after you get married, you want to form your own family. And so a lot of same-sex couples right now probably they have some family pressures to push them have their own kids. So, but it's for us, it's an equality issue, right? So because the heterosexual couple, they have a lot of resources, and also at the same time, the government wants to increase our birth rate, so they provide a sponsor allowance for the straight couple to have their own kids. The financial support is really like a lot, but for for same-sex couples, they need to fly to other countries, spend more money, and going through like unfamiliar medical environments, and the language is not like our own like a first language. It's still a lot of difficulties at this moment. And also at the same time, I would say in our bureaucracy and the governmental system, there are still a lot of issues. For example, like the frontline officers, they are not really, especially in the smaller county and the rural areas, they probably don't have a lot of opportunity to know like a real LGBT people. So that means when they face one or two in their the lifetime, they usually don't know how to respond them properly, and how can we train the officers and government officials to use gender neutral terminology, and then make them understand what is the gender equality issues. I think that is also one of the challenges our government is having right now. Also for the transgender issues, in Taiwan, we still need to have we call compulsory surgery if one transgender wants to change their own ID card. So that means you cannot have your own baby, relate to baby again. So you cannot have your own baby because you need to do the surgery and to change your ID card. So we are allowed to change your ID card, but you need to, we have a very weird policy. You need to have your parents' signature, even you are like 50 years old or 60 years old. So that create a kind of obstacles for the transgender individuals. Sometimes they probably, because of their gender identity, they don't have really good relationship with their parents. And this is not from the law, it's not from the policy, it's because the hospital don't want to be sued by their parents, because when they change their do the surgery, change their gender, the hospital worry about, oh, their parents might be upset and sue them. So this is a very weird situation, because that shows that the whole society still see people, even they are adult, under their parents' control. So I still probably people feel like, oh, Taiwan is very progressive, but we still have a lot of traditional culture and relate to our law and policy. So that's needs a lot of discussion and debates right now in Taiwan.
Thanks, Jennifer. Very, very important again for all of us to learn, the challenges which still exist, and despite these challenges, the work which is progressing ahead. So, Jennifer, will you mind sharing? When you look back, 20 years is a very long time. So, for 20 years, you have dedicatedly worked on advancing gender rights, as well as the freedom. So, and as far as I understand, there's a lot more work needs to be done at the UN level, right? Like when it comes to Taiwan, and I hope Taiwan and several other nations which get due recognition, and just like Palestine, for instance, and we totally support that. So, what message do you have for other activists and advocates around the world, and especially, when it's quite a long tenure, and and it has really yielded very positive results. When we say Taiwan has progressive laws, it's so good, but a lot of effort and work has gone into it. It must have been, I presume, it must have been very challenging. So, over to you to hear some highlights from that journey. Back to you.
Yeah, and this is a very good question. When I start to work regionally and internationally, Taiwan's nationality issues become one of the very important topic I had and have till right now. For example, I cannot enter the UN building by my passport. And even as I'm not from the government, I'm from civil society, I'm an NGO workers, I'm an activist. And also I represent Asia, but even just want to participate in an event or a panel related to LGBT or gender equality issues, I cannot use my passport to enter the UN building. Of course, we have as the global citizen, I really want to use the way like everybody else. And so I believe a lot of people don't really understand the reality. And also after I joining the some regional and international organization, for example, like Outright, before I joined as the full-time staff, I was the local activist working with Outright for many years. So they are very supportive, but they also face a lot of pressure from the Chinese government, the representative at the UN, to push them not to invite activists from Taiwan. And at the same time, I feel like as a Taiwanese activist, we really lack the experience and the connection between this country and everybody else around the world, because we cannot participate any kind of international occasions. So that means I don't understand at all when I start to work in those occasions, the international organizations. I had no clue. I had no knowledge, and then because we don't have like a senior activist to show us how to do the work. So also, especially the funding. Of course, Taiwan, people probably see as one of the developed countries in Asia, like Japan and South Korea. But I think it's a very interesting situation in this region, because Usually we call, so in Western countries, usually your economic developed status relate to your democratic level, and also relate to your, like we say, progressive levels. However, in this region, in Asia, we see some countries like South Korea, Japan, and or Singapore, they have very advanced economic situation, but for the civil society, especially relate to gender equality, is quite far from the standards. So, but take Taiwan as another example, that we never received any international funding, even like 20, 30 years old, when we years ago, when we were still in the developing levels. Because of the international status, we cannot receive any international funding. But there's also one, I feel like is also some positive impact. For example, at some point, some international fundings, they all have their goal, their strategies, and then they have their focuses. In the early 90s, a lot of international human rights funding focus on HIV preventions. So you can see a lot of HIV prevention NGOs grow up quickly because of the international fundings. But because in Taiwan, we don't have any international funding, we basically grow up by our own, and we decide what we want. We didn't, we are not impacted by those international fundings direction. So I would say that is also good positive impact, because we actually grow up really underground, and we can make our own decisions. So this is pros and cons, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks a lot, Jennifer. This is really interesting because I think it was last month when we were speaking with Hua, from transgender rights activist from Thailand, and who has, as you may be aware of already. So she was saying that we need to serve people what they need, and
Yes.
not that what donors want, not about the donors indicators, and no, which may not necessarily match what people's need. So thanks a lot for saying that, because it's really it's such a privilege to get to decide what issues are important, and get to work on that too. So that is a pro for sure.
Yes.
And that's all power to you. So before we wrap up, is there anything else which you would like to share with us?
Sure. Yeah, so right now I'm also switching my position to a more regional and international ones. As a very long-term activist, I realized that in Asia, we really need to work together to make sure we are sending the correct message to, like you said, to the international funders, to let them understand, because right now the international LGBT fundings around the world, only 5% dedicate in the region in Asia, but we have more than 60% population worldwide. So that means Asian activists and Asian issues really underrepresentation. So I'm really hoping that anyone are interested in do more this kind of regional international work, we can work together hand in hand to make sure that we are sending the message that we are not need your help, but we need a funder, work with us together. So I think this is different power dynamic, and I believe Asia will be the future, and we have to do more as the LGBT activists, because right now a lot of governments tend to more conservative and think LGBT issues is like a Western force try to intervene our national policies. So our voices is really matter.
Thank you. Absolutely. Your voices do matter and our voices do matter. So thanks a lot for saying that. Again, let us hope that the people remain central, as governments advance the development agenda. And development agenda is not driven by corporations or others, but is socially just for everyone. So,
Yeah.
so thanks a lot, Jennifer, for joining us today. Friends, we were listening to Jennifer Liu. She's Director of Asia Programs at Outright International, and has spent over 20 years in gender justice movement for LGBT communities, but also political reforms movement. Earlier, before joining Outright, she was the executive director of Taiwan Equality Campaign, which is now known as Marriage Equality Campaign Taiwan, and a leading organization that pushes marriage equality in Taiwan. Let us hope the good work which has happened in Taiwan also inspires and stimulates more such positive action towards gender equality in other nations and communities. So thanks a lot, Jennifer. All power to you. All the
Thank
best
you.
wishes. And we hope to hear from you at some other point soon. Thanks. Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Safe travels.
You too.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.